They call me the Don, not saying that I'm a mobster, but lyrically I'll break your kneecaps while eating pasta. Got Ducktown, Atlantic City roots, but my casa and Galloway like Rodney Jerkins and Nookie Johnson. Grandma made meatballs, the only other option was the chip on my shoulder or a plate of Swanson. Grandpa on the porch smoking cigars to Sinatra while I plan to turn our shrimp into some lobster.
Welcome everyone to Tap In with Tom. I'm your host, Tom Benefro Jr., and I have a guest here with me, Mr. Frank Formica.
How you all doing today?
So we're going to go over some things. We're going to have some questions for Frank here. But first, Frank, I wanted to share with you, I brought you a gift. It's right here. This is a replica of a illustration done by Janice Meridino. It is found in the Noise Art Garage, and I specifically got this for you, Frank, because it's described here as tossing nickels. It was painted in 2023, and it is a story of Janice's cousin, Stephanie, who used to throw nickels out of their window with their Aunt Josephine for her to go to the corner store for bread, and then she would deliver it to her upstairs apartment. And I can only assume that could have been your bakery.
It probably could. I could tell by the fact that it's 30 cents. It probably was around 1969 or 1970 when bread was that much.
Yeah.
But thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Take it over there. It's yours.
That looks like any of the other red brick buildings that used to line Mississippi Avenue or Fairmont Avenue, where there were many people living. So I do believe that.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I even have the paperwork to go with it so that you can look over that on your own time. See what other artwork Janice Meridino has done for the town.
Not to be upstaged, I brought you gifts too. We have cannolis here, which you can consume. We have tomato pie, which I don't know how many people that are familiar with our tomato pie, but years ago, my grandmother called this La Beats. Now, it wasn't until marketers in the early 2000s found it to be more fashionable to call this tomato pie. But to my grandmother, it's always pizza. But we have it every day at 2310 Arctic Avenue. And then we have here biscottis. This is my grandmother's original recipe. These are cranberry walnut and some chocolate and some vanilla. And without a doubt, we bring the Atlantic City world famous sub, which is the bread that made Atlantic City famous, that is in every sub shop, going from the White House, going out to, I can't name them all, I'll get them in, but Dino's, Sacco's, Vic's, the Sugar Hill. This is the bread that made Atlantic City famous. So you got your presents, I got mine.
I appreciate it. We would go to St. Michael's, and after St. Michael's, we would always go to your bakery and get tomato pie. So I'll definitely have to share that memory with my daughters, and really appreciative of you.
There was another famous bakery there called Panarelli's, there were actually 6 Italian bakeries within a 3-block radius. And right next to St. Michael's is Panarelli's tomato pie, but they called it pizza too.
Okay. All right. Well, to get started, what was it like growing up in Ducktown, Atlantic City, and how did that neighborhood shape you?
Well, I would say that it was definitely unique because the neighborhood was centered around St. Michael's Church, which was an Italian-speaking church. It was not chartered by the Diocese of Camden. It was chartered from Rome because way back then, 1904 all the way to 1924, there was no Diocese of Camden. And the West Diocese, which was in Trenton, would not give us a church. All of the immigrants that came there, which came from Delia, Sicily, Capodolandro, and my family came from a small town called St. Pietro di Niscetta, which they say in their language, Pier Niscetta. All the families knew each other. And so I did not know that most people weren't Italian until I got to high school. And then, and then I found out that, everybody wasn't as friendly as they used to be. So, And growing up there, it was great. Nobody had a car. There was no crime. We had basketball was our second religion.
Okay.
Playing under Shorty Sacco at St. Michael's. If there were 200, there were 400 people, 400 students in St. Michael's Grammar School.
Yeah.
If there were 210 boys, 200 of them played basketball.
Interesting.
The Biddy League, Wee Biddy League, there must have been 30 teams.
There is some strong Italian Catholic basketball teams out there.
Well, let's not be remiss to let everybody know that Chris Ford started playing as a Wee Biddy player in St. Michael's basketball court. But here's what you don't know. St. Michael's basketball court was actually not a basketball court at all. It was an opera hall called Dante Hall, and it was set up for opera productions. And then by the 50s, somebody got the bright idea to put two baskets up at either end. They hung one up on the balcony, and they put another one up on the stage. So we had the smallest basketball court on the island, and we had the best teams.
Interesting. So it wasn't regulation, that's for sure, right?
Yep.
It wasn't a regulation court.
Regulation for us.
Well, I want to get to your bakery. And so your family has a successful bakery. And what's the story behind it?
The story behind it is very simple. My grandfather came here in 1900, worked as a railroad laborer. I have his union card from 1906. As Atlantic City, he came here with his brother Santo. As Atlantic City started developing, and of course, I know we have a short interview, but as Dr. Jonathan Pitney was commissioned by all of the rich Quakers in Philadelphia to make Atlantic City a spa resort, he called for his wife, my grandmother Rosa Bongiovanni, and then they were married in 1912, and she came here, got married, and already had her plan. They planned it for 6-7 years to open up a grocery, butcher, and bakery right across from Angelo's Fairmont Tavern. Okay, so the bakery was taken off, and the first bakery was built in 1916. Him and his brother Santo. By 1919, my grandfather, Francesco Formica, had the bakery going in the building directly behind the White House where Mississippi Avenue is. That was the first. And then by 1926, business really taken off. They built the brand new bakery in 1926 at 2310 Arctic Avenue, which is still there today. And it's been continuously operating since 1919, so that's 106 years. My grandfather and his brothers started it. My father and his brothers after World War II kept it going. My grandfather, at the age of 62, he was born in 1882, so he was 60. He was 62 years old, I think, in 1945. He said, "Boys, this is your bakery now. All you got to do is take care of me and Mom." So they lived another 30 years. He said you had to pay the light bills, whatever. And then my uncles and father ran it to 87. I took it over in 87, and it's been going ever since.
And there's some history behind what occurred in the early stages of the bakery, which I look forward to getting into. But before we do, I do want to talk a little bit about your professional career. In addition to the bakery, you served as an Atlantic County freeholder. And what inspired you to get into public service?
It was very easy. One of my best friends, Denny Levinson, was very active in the county. And as a business person, you want to stay networked. So I was trying to get the brand more recognized, and I would show up everywhere. And finally, one day, Denny Levinson said to me, "Look, Frank, you show up at the opening of an envelope. So why don't you just run for office?" And he says, "We have a spot. We could use you on the freeholder board." So I ran for office, and unfortunately, I won. And then I served.
Too honest,
I
Frank.
served for 15 years. I was the freeholder chairman director for about 9 or 10 of those years, and it was a very rewarding, for the most part, very rewarding position. You manage all of county business. You oversee, the schools, the jail, the prosecutor's office, the roads, the bridges, all that. But the most important thing was that you could help people in various ways, whatever their situation was. Atlantic County has an amazing social services network. 102,000 people need social assistance of the 280. And so it was good until it wasn't. And then I decided to just go back into private life again.
There you go. Now, we will get right back into that, but I am curious, what's your proudest accomplishment? Sounds like there's a lot of great things you did over that 15-year period.
Well,
what's your proudest?
There's two. The Shore Mall was about to close, and there was a program that we had called CBDG, which is Community Development Block Grant Money, that Al Boskov, that owned all of the Boskovs, came to us and asked us if he could take within the law a certain amount of bonding money to keep his business going. Otherwise, he was going to close and the Shore Mall was going to close. And I felt fortunate to be a moving part of that with the county executive. And we saved Boskov's, which, by the way, is the number one Boskov's in their chain still today. And he paid back all of that. And the second thing was being part of, or there's three, being part of getting the Stockton College campus to Atlantic City, which the county bonded about $120 million, which was guaranteed by the room rentals and the room of the students, and that is being paid back as well. And the third was getting the aviation park opened up in what was called NAFEC at that time, or FAA Tech Center, which is going to be a good way to diversify our economy. So there's my good feelings about that.
Well, I appreciate it. We all appreciate all the work that you've put in. And back to the business, how did you balance your business and serving at the same time?
It's costly. Many people that have been in business, that were in business or are in business, you have to certainly, it takes a toll on your business. And I could just tell you that, I had to balance that with, extra management, but my personal touch had to be there. So I won't say it was easy.
Okay. Well, we appreciate it. Let's talk a little bit about your family journey. So you spoke about where your ancestors come from. Could you talk to me about some of the early ages of Atlantic City, maybe some stories? I know you shared a few with me prior. Well,
I mean, certainly, as I said, my grandfather came here as an immigrant with his brother. And, he came here when Atlantic City was just in its coming of age. He did his hard work. He got to where he had to be. My father and his brothers and my two aunts, I still have an aunt that's living, Aunt Ann. I think she's 95. Everybody had to work in that business. And, when World War II came around, there were three brothers that were making that business go, and my grandmother begged to have one hold back, could not. All three had to go into the service, and my grandmother and my grandfather and my two aunts and other family members kept that business going for 2 or 3 years. So
was there ever any threats to the business? I know it wasn't easy having a business.
Well, I would say, like, if you want to go some early history. So one of the threats to the business was the Depression, because even though Atlantic City didn't suffer much, people didn't have any money. And so at that time they were trying to sell bread for 4 cents a loaf. And the ladies of the neighborhood, they could not afford bread. So my grandmother said, "You can make your own dough and we'll bake it for a penny."
Okay.
All right.
Interesting.
And I would just say this, that my grandmother, Rosa Bongiovanni, she was really like the energy, the bulwark of the family.
Okay.
I can remember when I was 12, 13 years old, my grandmother must have been about 70. My Uncle Frank was working 16, 17 hours a day, and he lived right on top of the bakery. The bakery was actually built by 3 pretty famous families. It was built, the Calvi Company,
okay,
the Lieberich, and actually Jimmy Sarkos, our chief, his grandfather built that bakery. He was the general contractor. Everybody got paid in bread. So at the end of the day, I'm watching my grandmother. I'm sweeping the floor before we start. She's carrying 100-pound bags of flour to the mixer, And I said, why are you doing that? She says, I'm going to let Frank sleep an extra hour, my uncle.
There you go.
By the way, when my grandmother died, when she was 89 years old, she came to this country in 1912, and right the day after she got married, she put an apron on. When she died, they took her from my aunt's house with an apron on, making cookies in the kitchen. She went to the hospital in an apron.
Wow. Incredible. That's how far back the Formica legacy goes, everyone.
Sure.
And you can't really speak about Italian-American community without mentioning the Formica name. How did the Italian-American community come into play in the Formica history?
Well, of course, it was intertwined. It was like there's no separating. It's like saying, how does a knitted garment stay together?
That's right.
You can't take it apart. My grandfather was Francisco. He was the first Grand Marshal of the first Columbus Day.
There you go.
Of the first Columbus Day parade. Oddly enough, although it didn't exist in Italy, he was born on October 12th in 1882. He was born on October the 12th. So, we could talk about Christopher Columbus another day. It's sort of a little bit of a touchy subject, but it's
nice that you brought it up.
Always part of the Italian heritage.
Always. It's something that we talked about in our last
and
episode.
if you want to go through the neighborhood real fast to give the idea the difference in economies, everybody goes to ShopRite or Acme or Wegmans or Whole Foods. There were 22 grocery stores within a 4-block area. You had you had Letitia's, Groloni's. You had
Interesting.
So everybody got their food every day, fresh from a butcher, from the vegetables, from the cheese, all that. And it was great. We were not allowed in the house when we were old enough until dinner, if it was a Saturday, because our parents, we drove them crazy. There were 5 kids in our family. And, we played football right at the Columbus Post Park, right across the street from where your father grew up at Capone's over there, right. The village, I mean. So, we went to the beach every day in the summer. How bad's that? How many people listening to this can walk to the beach every day of the summer and go surfing, I
hear you.
One of my surfing buddies was Phil Lanetti.
Okay.
They lived around the corner. I could name about a dozen other people, but it was, I tell my children, you missed out on a great childhood.
Sure did. I've been told stories where, it was always an open door policy. Anybody could just, my father told me he could walk into someone's house, get a drink and something to eat out of their fridge and sit on the couch until somebody was ready to come talk.
I'll give you one better.
Yeah.
Atlantic City in 1965 had 417 liquor licenses.
Wow.
You can document me. 417 bars from Jackson to Maine. In Ducktown, there were 10 taverns, at least. I probably missed some. I could start naming them all from, the original, the original Club Madrid. Tony Parisi had that.
Okay.
Maxi Muck's across the street. You had Moon's Tavern, which was called something. I'm just telling you, there were like 15. So here's the line. Yeah. Ducktown was the kind of neighborhood, all blue-collar workers. Get done working on a Friday, go down to the corner shot and beer, have a couple drinks, come home, get in the door, sit down, have dinner, and not realize you weren't in your own house.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly how I've been told it works.
Listen, there was a Barbara's Fish Market. Was in Barbara's house.
Oh, okay.
The living room was converted to a store. At Christmas time, they had a bathtub in their living room. Of course, there was no furniture in there. It was the living room. I mean, it was the space of the living room.
Yeah.
With eels in it.
They were just honored, actually, by the city for I think, for resilience and still being in business today.
Sure.
So it's great to hear.
Everybody was intertwined in Ducktown. If you say 6 degrees of separation, you get to Ducktown, maybe you're at 3 degrees of separation. If you weren't a cousin, you're a compadre, and it was a very solid neighborhood. There were 1,600 voters in Ducktown, okay? Wow. Now, where's Ducktown? And why is it called Ducktown?
You're asking me?
I'm asking you.
Because, as my father mentioned in the last episode, they would actually not hunt per se, but they would trap ducks and chickens, and they would farm ducks and chickens. And
Partially true. So, partially true.
okay,
so
tell me, talk to me.
The Pennsylvania Reading rail line was right there where Nike is or something. That came up. That was the bus station. You remember that, right?
Yeah.
But that Pennsylvania rail line had 8 main lines. What does that mean? That means if you go to 30th Street Station today and you count the amount of lines there are, how many are there? 6. But in Atlantic City, there was 8. You go to California every 3 hours. You go to California through Chicago. New York every hour. Okay. Why? Because Atlantic City was the #1 convention destination in the world. The Boardwalk Hall is still today the largest unpillared masonry and steel roof in the world. No one has equaled it.
Wow. Now that I didn't know.
Of course you didn't. You're not old enough. So what did it mean? It meant that when the China and Glass Show, which was an international convention, it would be like Comdeck in Las Vegas today. Okay. When the China and Glass Show came here, we had like 50,000 people, maybe more, 100,000 people coming for that whole week from Malaysia, Japan, China, Europe.
Wow.
All over the place to show their wares. So that's the reason why there was no automobiles didn't catch on yet. Okay. Airfare was still in its airlines are still in their infancy. Trains were the only way to go up to the 50s. That's why and everybody thrived. Atlantic City probably had more speakeasies during Prohibition. They probably did better. Angeloni's was, the Club Madrid was a speakeasy, but everybody worked. In Atlantic City in the 1950s, there were more first-class hotel rooms than there are today with all these magnificent casinos.
Interesting. Now, what about the mention of the Democratic National Convention coming into town? Did you feel like that was around the same time that there may have been a decline in the reputation?
That was Atlantic City's Waterloo, if you know your history. That was the battle. That was the battle that, what happened was the 1964 Democratic National Convention was the first nationally televised national convention in history. Brinkley and whatever, all those famous newscasters were there. And by that time in 64, the Quakers had sold their interest in the Traymore, the Breakers, the Ambassador, which is the Tropicana today, the President Hotel, the Marlborough Blenheim, all those giant hotels. The Traymore had 2,000 rooms back then. And the operators there were suffering. Do you know that when that convention came to Atlantic City, which, by the way, we were controlled Republicans. Hap Farley controlled wonderfully the politics of Atlantic City, and he lobbied to get that convention for Atlantic City business, even though they're a Democrat. Do you know it was nationally televised that they ran out of linen and towels and were giving guests paper bath towels?
No good. Not good.
That was sort of the doomed Goslin.
So you do agree, based on the last podcast, that
it's incontrovertible facts.
Okay. Interesting. Wow. Now, that same era, how did you see some changes in the city post Democratic National Convention? Was there any, any upward mobility afterward, or have you only seen a decline?
No, I'm 12 years old in 1964. Didn't make never minds to me. I wasn't in the hotel business. We were still selling bread.
That's right.
I was still playing basketball. It never affected us at that level. It started a trend. A lot of things happened in 64. The airline industry started to take off. The trains are on the decline. Henry Ford's assembly lines were everybody had a car. And the worst thing that happened by 1967, 68, remember, Atlantic Avenue used to have a Christmas parade that rivaled Fifth Avenue. We had shops, we had Learners, we had Snelling and Snelling, hamburgers. We had Fifth Avenue businesses on Atlantic Avenue. There were still people living there that worked there. The problem with Atlantic City is that there's no heart and soul today. There's nobody living there that has, can say they have, very few people have a dependable job. So as air conditioner, I say, as Mr. Carrier's invention took over, and the first mall, the Echelon Mall, the Cherry Hill Mall, the Shore Mall on 67, it gutted all the main streets of all the towns, but especially Atlantic City, and that was the beginning of the end. At one time, Atlantic City had, 4 garment manufacturers for the military. It had 4 dairies, Abbott's, Seal Test, Clearman's. It had battery manufacturing companies, fishing fleets. It was a thriving community. Headquarters of South Jersey Gas, Atlantic Electric, Ma Bell, all in Atlantic City. All restaurants supporting, all started to leave.
All right. Well, something that can be mentioned, though, is how incredible it's been for your business to still scale during this time. So how did your family and you navigate through those historical changes, specifically scaling your business and more?
Well, that goes back to really ancient history. I told you the new bakery was built in 1926. In them days, it wasn't like you had computers and you had even, even like slips of invoices. Here's how my grandfather delivered bread. We had about 71 hotels in the side streets of Atlantic City, going back to the Columbus Hotel or, where you would see like the Irish pub, whatever, and they bring the bread every day. And on the board in the kitchen, they had a 100-day calendar. And he'd mark how many bread were there. 36 bread, 26 bread, no money yet.
Just like that.
Just like that. Collected after the summer, okay? So when they did the bakery, when they built the new bakery, they got everything paid for cash, but for one thing, equipment. And they had state-of-the-art equipment. Back in 1926, our bakery had an automatic flour feeding apparatus that was done by what they call like a worm gear, like a farm worm gear that would push grain. And it would automatically dump the flour in the mixer. State-of-the-art, water, the whole thing. But the problem was there was a $3,000 note that was held by Boardwalk National Bank. Boardwalk National Bank was the premier bank in this area. And they had a young collection officer whose name was Elwood Kirkman, which many people listening to this or their parents would know who he was. Anyway, came the day when my grandfather couldn't pay that mortgage on time, and it was just before Labor Day. He could pay it in a couple weeks, but he had to pay it on that day. So he had advance notice that they were going to come to foreclose on the mortgage, and Elwood Kirkman was going to come with him. And he either had to pay up that day or they'd forfeit the equipment. And in them days, they had what's called absolute mortgages. Absolute mortgages, which are illegal now, you could make payments, 29 payments. If you didn't make the 30th payment, you lost everything. So Elwood, now, anybody knows where Formica's Bakery is, you have to walk down a 100-foot alley to get to the back where the production company is. So just like you would get a sheriff's officer to deliver a writ or to deliver a notice to a house, and during the Depression, they had what are called dollar-a-year man. A dollar-a-year man is they deputize you with a badge and a sidearm, and the deputy that would accompany you to the particular ethnic neighborhood. Remember, we're immigrants, okay? So they wanted somebody that could speak Italian. But my aunt was there. So they had this guy, his name was Guglielmo, and nobody liked him in the neighborhood. And he had this sidearm, and he's walking down the alley, and everybody's looking out the screen door, and my grandfather was ready for him. My grandfather's brother had just passed, and his sister-in-law was able to collect a $3,000 life insurance, which the Italians always did everything in cash.
Okay.
And he knew that my aunt, who had the building next door, had this $3,000. He asked his wife, my grandmother, could you please ask Mary if we can borrow the $3,000 till next week?
Hey, you got to do what you got to do.
So when Elwood Kirkman comes in the bakery, there's a 20-foot butcher block bench where we rolled bread on. And on the top of the bench was a cigar box with $3,000 in it and my grandfather's double barrel 12 gauge L.C. Smith shotgun. So as soon as Googly Emma came in, the smile went off his face.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm sure.
And Kirkman says, Frank, you know why we're here? We either got to foreclose the mortgage or $3,000. So he took the cigar box and he slid it across the bench. What's this? Opens it up. He said, count it. My Aunt Lena is interpreting. Counts out the money. He says, Frank, it's all here.
There you go.
He says, I'll take the mortgage back to the bank and I'll get it stamped. My grandfather picks up a shotgun. He says, you'll stamp it right here. No problem. So if you don't have a stamp, lawyers will know something called locus sigilli. It's the circle of my signature.
Okay.
So he says, you make the locus sigilli. And he signed it, and that was that for 5 minutes. Then they had to walk 100 feet out the alley to the Arctic Avenue. My grandfather comes outside with his shotgun, and he says to Googly Emma, if I don't shoot you at the end of the alley, I'll shoot you the next time I see you.
There you go.
Gone. Never be seen again.
Interesting.
So that was one hurdle.
We almost lost Formica Bakery.
We almost lost it. World War II, almost lost it because they had to literally make the bread. Now, World War II, Atlantic City was busy. Why? Because the shelf on Haddon Hall and all the hotels were converted into hospitals. And all of the wounded that were coming back from the European theater of World War II got stationed in Atlantic City.
Look at that.
You didn't know that, right?
Look at that.
And
No idea.
so that was the iteration of the submarine sandwich, because they wanted to make something that looked like a submarine. That's one story. God rest his soul. Other people say it's different, but this used to have points on it, like a submarine did in World War II.
Okay.
There were so many soldiers, so many sandwich shops. The big one before the White House wasn't until 45 was Mancini's. Okay,
Very familiar name.
Okay. So the Mancini family, which has been in Ducktown forever, that was the premier sub shop. So anyway, they got through that crisis, okay, World War II. And then as casinos came in, what happened? Well, they brought all their chefs from France, New York, San Francisco, and they didn't want Atlantic City bread. This was the bread that made Atlantic City famous. It was the bread of the 500 Club. It was the bread, in different sizes, but it's still the same mix: flour, salt, yeast, and water. Same one we use today. So Formica's was just, like the other bakeries, they're all suffering. Remember, I told you there were 6 bakeries. There was Atlantic City Italian Bakery, which is the Panarelli family, absolute phenomenal family and bakery. There was A. Rando, run by Nick Rando for many years, a great bakery.
Beloved here.
There was Santo Rando, which was on Florida Avenue. There was Formica's. And then there was another bakery opened up. It was called Venice Bakery. That was owned by Jimmy Patermo. That was the same side as the Venice restaurant. And then for a short time, there was a bakery that owned by Squash Rando. He made pizza shells where the Alki Club is. So they all suffered. And in the end, there only wound up being 3 bakeries. There was Panarelli's, Formica's, and Rando's. And everybody's getting the same piece of pie. But people were moving out. So I realized I bought the bakery in 87 for my family. The Italians don't give anything away. I bought it. Anyway.
Facts right there. Absolutely.
I started to realize that everybody just doesn't love this bread. They want ciabatta bread, Asiago cheese bread, cranberry walnut raisin bread. So we transformed ourselves into a partially artisan bakery, as well as making the Atlantic City subs. And that propelled us forward. And,
Interesting. You diversified. A variety.
And then, in my lifetime, I mean, the casinos, they closed 3 casinos in 2012. Superstorm Sandy hit right after that, devastated everybody. And then by the time COVID came around, so today we're invested in. We were lucky enough to, get some investors to really move forward. And George Norcross and his brother and a guy named Pat McKenna invested in the bakery. That's sort of like, we sort of have a little history of that here. I don't know if it's in pan or not, but it gives a little history of what we're doing. And George found out that his grandfather had Freitag Bakery from 1897 in Camden. We got together.
That's how that came together.
And right now there's my grandfather, Francesco, when he was right after he was married. And today we have we just got certified. I think we're the only bakery in Atlantic County that got certified by SQF. It's like a super FDA. We will now be able to serve nationally. We perfected a fully baked, frozen Atlantic City sub bread that you do not have to, you have to thaw it out, but you do not have to reheat it or anything like that. So we're in the Wells Fargo Center. We're the official bread of the Philadelphia Flyers.
Fantastic.
We are getting ready to launch into Wegmans. We are in the Hard Rock in Florida. So we still have a fresh side, which I manage, and when we have a frozen side that is just getting off the ground. So that's how we did it, how we're still doing it, and you never can rest on your laurels. You just got to keep working hard. So
that's right. I can hear, that there's always been some core values in the business, right? Whether formalized or not, it sounds like there's always been some core values. You've obviously been able to describe so much that your family has offered to Ducktown, Atlantic City. But what do you think is maybe one of the top unique identifiers that your legacy has brought to Atlantic City?
I'll tell you what it is. It's always giving back to the community. From my grandmother allowing people to bake bread when they had no money, and from my education of the Salesian nuns of St. Michael's that told me charity covers a multitude of sin, I always try to be charitable wherever I can. And you don't want to talk about it because if you get a reward by talking about it, but as much as we could, I always had this philosophy about employees. And, we talk about the Mexican community today. The Mexican community replaced the Italian immigrants in a lot of businesses, whether it's Angelo's, whether it's Formica's, Rando's, whatever like that. And, my philosophy always is you're working with me, not for me. So you get a sense of your employees and, we were lucky, fortunate, I should say, to be honored. The press used to have something called the Bailey Award. Okay. And that was something based on George Bailey from It's a Wonderful Life. And only top businesses would get it that were able to, show their community outreach. So if there's any core value, work ethic is, the first thing I did in the bakery was get a broom. The work ethic is always there, but you got to have, your business has to be identified as somebody that connects with neighborhoods and people.
That's right. And I'm sure to this day, you probably still pick up a broom when you're in your shop.
I was packing bread yesterday. I mean, I'm still,
and when your employees see that, it gives them more dignity.
Yeah, it's certainly something I'm sure that many successful people have done,
That's right. Well, there's actually a story about JFK was walking through the NASA building, and he had stopped and spoke to a janitor. And the janitor had said, "Sir, I'm working on putting a man on the moon." And that was the mindset of the janitor that JFK spoke to. And I'm sure that your employees and other employees, if you provide them that same dignity and they have a goal, then they're able to work much much harder for you. And I think we could use a lot of that in many businesses. There's some businesses in the area that, everyone has an employee that may be disgruntled. You see it here and there. But I think if we can just remind business owners of some of those core values from 1919, I think it would really help.
I could say this. There's a family in Ducktown that has put 3 children through medical school as a waiter, waitress. These people didn't have educations.
Wonderful.
I mean,
Wonderful.
So the Fiorentino family, their parents, all they had was working with their hands, but they put 3 kids through medical school. And it goes on and on. The work ethic comes from your family. It's hard to instill today. You hear the complaint of every business. We can't find anybody who wants to work. People don't care. What COVID did was give a false sense of security when the government was sending out $1,200 a month or whatever it was to, people just think that they have a net, and it's all going to come crashing down. Because if you can't, you don't have a work ethic, there's going to come a time in the near future, I believe, where if you can't work, you can't eat.
That's right. Now, what do you think about how Italians and our work ethic has contributed to the city? I understand the bakery and how the bakeries really built a foundation here at Atlantic City. But what were some other things that Italian Americans built in the city and how we contributed to the city?
All you have to do is go back to the records of Atlantic City's public works and find out that just about every department there, from the boardwalk department to maintenance to anything else, was all usually headed up or had included a lot of Italian Americans. Italian Americans built New York City. I know the Dutch called it New Amsterdam, and I know that it had all that. But when you talk about the trowel trades, just talk about the people that do cement, from, striping bricks to laying block to doing cement. If you look at the stamps, there aren't many non-Italians on those stamps. So, it's sort of like, and I want to give deference to the Mexican workers that do work hard today. The work ethic comes from need. And it comes from a sense of pride for your family. You can amass wealth, you can be successful, and still not have a good name. And the only way you have a good name is if you don't embarrass your family name. And like, everybody knows this little vignette. You go to a funeral and you see born 1945, died 2000. And in the middle, there's a dash. It's everything in the dash. His whole life's in the dash. That's not right. When he was born. It's like, I don't want to get too philosophical here because I know it's, but
no, that's all right. It's open forum.
But I have 3 brothers and a sister, and they all have the same work ethic I do. And I'm sure that's true of every Italian family who came out of Ducktown. By the way, Ducktown got its name because those 8 main lines of that Pennsylvania Reading Rail Station came up to Arctic Avenue. There was nothing behind that. There was no roads. There was no nothing. But where your father said there were ducks, there were ducks. There were duck farms. So the Italians went on the lowland in the meadows right back there where Smitty's Docks is and where Fabi was and all that before the expressway. They were little duck farms, but the duck that came here weren't really like American duck. They were Canadian Brant, Brandt. And when all the rich and famous would come on those luxury trains to Atlantic City, they had a passenger platform. And the limos would pull up. But at high tide in August, the Brant duck would follow up right to the platforms. And people would look over and go, "What is this, Ducktown?" It was a derogatory term. If my grandfather heard me say Ducktown, he'd go,
"Really?"
Because it meant it was the Italian ghetto.
We're getting closer to the truth here. That we've heard bits and pieces, But now we're finally getting to
That-
started off derogatory.
Started off derogatory, and
Interesting.
then I formed the Ducktown Revitalization Association with Angelo Mancuso, Art Ponzio Sr., and a guy named Edmund Calanzi, who was a commissioner.
Okay.
And when we took the term as an identifier, as a term of endearment to the people that came before us, so and our families. But if you said that back in the 50s, that wasn't a good thing to say,
It was more of a like,
Yeah.
what's going on
Yeah,
here?
it was just a Bowery.
Yeah, no good. Well, I'm glad to get down to the real point of the term Ducktown.
I mean, there may be others. I'm not, I'm not.
We've heard a few.
I'm not. Ducktown. Duckback haircuts. All that's all baloney.
Oh, really? Okay.
But and how do I know about that? My grandmother's oldest brother, Frank Bongiovanni, had the first limousine in Atlantic City in 1929. And that's what he said people would say when they
Okay.
got in his limo. Where are you taking this, Ducktown? By the way, it went from Missouri, so the Venafros are in, because you guys lived on the right side of Missouri,
That's right.
to Texas. It's got to be the east side of Texas. So,
Has that expanded? Is it?
Well,
are they considering it different parameters now?
the parameters were from Atlantic to the Bay. That was the traditional Ducktown. But by ordinance, a former city councilman, the Reverend Earl Pierce, at our request, extended Ducktown to the boardwalk, but that was to get grant money. Okay? That was to get grant money. So
Understood.
a lot of people at different times want to be in Ducktown. Some don't, but a lot do.
Well, there's multiple communities now in Ducktown that were spotlighted in the event at the Noise Art Garage, where Janice Maradino's artwork was exhibited. Specifically, there's a Bangladeshi community now that's pretty prominent in Ducktown.
Do you know what the first Italian deli, where it was and who owned it in Ducktown?
Tell me.
Next to the rectory at 6 North Mississippi Avenue, next to the rectory at St. Michael's. Meyer T. Wynn, a Jewish man, had the first Italian deli in Ducktown.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. That's good to
So
know.
my point was, the thread on that was, there was Bangladesh communities. Originally, if you go back to 1920, if you go to, I can't think of the guy that has the antique store on Atlantic Avenue. I can't think of the name of it. But if you go there, he has pictures. It looked like there were purveyors of all kinds of produce, meat, fish. They were all Jewish,
Throughout Ducktown.
carts, horse and buggies, and
Okay.
carts,
Yeah.
And it's a really rich history. I could talk forever on the Jewish history of businesses too, because it was really intertwined,
Understood.
So-
Interesting. So now, current state, Formica Bakery, we heard a lot about what you've done for your scalability of your business. What do you have planned in the near future? Anything you want to let us in on that we may see in the future here in Atlantic City location or throughout?
Well, Atlantic City, we still have our retail store there. We moved all our manufacturing to Pleasantville, a plant, which also has the Source Atlantic City water, in case somebody's wondering.
Okay.
We had that
there will be.
we had that validated by the Atlantic County Utilities Authority. We have it certified. But, the thing is, we have to see what happens in Atlantic City. At one point, we thought about putting a retail on the boardwalk, to highlight, the future is to just keep up our standards, make them better, and just keep going. Right now, we employ 100 people. So
It's fantastic. 100 people are employed. And what are some things that you think the city could do, just overall from a positive perspective, for its reputation that would assist in your business, right? What would bring more business to Formica Bakery or any business?
I would like to make it more generic. So why don't we get down to the heart of the matter? what the heck is going on in Atlantic City?
I was trying to say it a little bit more politely,
I mean,
but I appreciate
you
your
know,
honesty.
Atlantic City has so much potential. I mean, there is. It just hasn't been channeled and tapped. And I don't want to say, you know, the mayor's an easy target, city council's an easy target because, you know, if you're in charge of something, the buck stops with you. But not Atlantic City. Atlantic City is controlled by the state of New Jersey.
Okay.
So every single thing that happens here has to be approved or vetoed. So it is beyond comprehension and unconscionable that we have a reputation of being dirty and unsafe, because we're not that dirty and we're not that unsafe. But something has to give. I mean, I don't care if it's, you know, putting 7 police substations up on the boardwalk. I don't care if it's what Donald Trump is doing, whether you hate him or not, in Washington, D.C., getting homeless people to stop panhandling anybody. Okay. If you want to do something in Atlantic City, you want to ride a bike from Ventnor up to Gardner's Basin, you know, people are trepidatious about that because, you know, now the police are doing a great job. I think Chief Sarkis is doing a good job. I think there was a lot of police presence, but then you got Pacific Avenue. Then you got Atlantic Avenue. Like I said before, Atlantic Avenue's Christmas parade would rival Fifth Avenue, and it would. Now we just have to try to get what I would call, you know, a plan to superimpose over our master plan that has things changing. The hospital has got a great CEO right now. He's moving things. Mike Charlton. You'd expect some things from that. Stockton College, you know, has got some things going. Bart Blatstein put hundreds of millions of dollars into the water park. You got 3 anchors. It's time. It's time for people to pull it together. And I think one of the ways this can happen is if we'll see who the next governor is. Personally, I think Jack Ciattarelli has a lot of great ideas. I don't know that much about Micah Sherrill, and I think Ciattarelli would be great for South Jersey and Atlantic City. Coordinate something with the county. The county runs the best county in the state and maybe the country with what it has, and they have the ability to do it. So I don't have the answer. I have a passion to be part of it. But all I'm saying is that we have got to get a perception out nationally that we can market that Atlantic City is clean and safe and a fun place to come to.
All right. I appreciate that, Frank. Thank you for your take. Thank you for your time. And I really appreciate everyone for watching. Please tune in more if you're looking to contact myself or Mr. Frank Formica. I'll have our information in the comments or bio below. And
I'll give out my phone number. They can call me 609-839-3904. 609-839-3904 for anything, but especially if you want some bread.
There you go. Thank you. Thanks, Frank. Appreciate it.
Since a child, success has been my credo. Yeah, from the curb we all began to ponder and think about all the music that we could conjure. Brutally being honest, soon you will see me conquer. No opportunity squandered. Failure's the highest honor.